Hello everyone. Wanted to make just one more video talking about the mastery test here as the day has now come upon us. So I just want to give some of my reactions to what I saw with the practice mastery tests for those of you who completed it. If you did complete it, you should have received an email from me with my comments about your submission. And you can also view those where you submitted the assignment. But I just went ahead and copied and pasted all of that and emailed it to you as well. So make sure you check that before you take the test if you haven't seen it, just so you can get that feedback. I also put a grade with it. I included like a grade at the bottom, which, for the actual mastery test, I'm not the one who grades it. People from the department grade it, but I gave you a grade out of 6. And just for your reference, for the real test, you need to get at least a 3 out of 6 from 2 different people. So you need a total of 6 combined from 2 different people. So if you got a 4 and a 2, that would also work, but that probably wouldn't happen. So if you got a 3, you're kind of, I think, right around passing, at least for me. But you want to make sure to take some of my comments into account to try to bump that up a little bit, just to give yourself some breathing room. And if you got lower than a 3, then that means from what I saw, I didn't think it was something that the people grading the test would end up giving a passing grade. So if you got less than a 3, I would really make sure you read through those comments closely. Let me know if you have any questions about them, and try to take that stuff into account when you do the real test. The biggest thing for me in my comments, the things I ended up saying most often to people were number one. Okay, so the prompt that I gave you, right? It was that article about the Travis Scott Astro World thing. I don't know why they pick these, like, I don't know. They try to like keep hip with these like current events and stuff. I don't know why they do that, but yeah. So that was the article, and then the prompt asked you the question from the prompt. If you go back and look at it, the question they asked you, or the prompt that they gave you, it was to write an essay arguing whether or not promoters and performers should be held responsible when when bad stuff happens at concerts, like if people get hurt or injured or killed or whatever, like in the case of the Astroworld thing. So the prompt itself was not asking you about the Astroworld concert. It was not asking you about Travis Scott. It wasn't asking you what should have been done to avoid that happening. None of that was the question. The question was, should promoters and performers be the ones who are responsible in a situation like that, in any situation like that? So something that I think is really important is to realize that they're asking you like a more general question. They're asking you a more like just like this kind of standard ethical question of, should promoters and performers be the ones who are responsible when this thing happens? They weren't asking you, what should Travis Scott have done in this situation, or should specifically Travis Scott be held accountable in this situation? They wanted a more general answer, So the reason they give you the article is it's like one piece of evidence, So if you were going to say, promoters should be held responsible because when they're not responsible, bad things can happen, and just look what happened in the Astroworld thing. It could be one example, one piece of evidence, but your whole essay should not be about the article that they give you. If you're spending your essay summarizing the article, or saying, well, this is what they should have done at the Astroworld thing, then I just think you're kind of missing the point, and you're kind of getting away from what the prompt is asking you. A direct answer to the prompt, the kind of thesis that I think you should have had for that practice essay, was either promoters and performers should be held responsible for what happens at concerts, or they should not be held responsible for what happens at concerts. And then from there, you want to try to have like at least 3 main reasons that you think that. So a lot of people were saying that they should be held responsible, right? Okay, sure. If we were going to make that argument, what would the reasons be that a promoter or a performer should be held responsible? Some people mentioned, well, this kind of thing happens a lot, and you should be prepared for it and see it coming. Okay, that's one good reason. I think that is a good reason. So maybe you could have one paragraph where you just explain that reason, talk about it as much as you can, and that's one of your paragraphs. So basically, what you want to do is make sure that you have like specific reasons for why you believe your thesis. Like what are the reasons that we should agree with you that they should be held accountable, or that they shouldn't. Like I had some other people saying, that they shouldn't be held accountable, and they said stuff like, You know, when a performer is performing, they're focusing on a lot of other stuff, and there's a lot of lights, and they can't necessarily see what's happening in the crowd. And yeah, that sounds like a good reason to me. So I would give that its own paragraph. And again, I wouldn't just say this is specifically what happened to Travis Scott. I would say in general, whenever any performer is performing, they have to focus on their act, and they, can't be monitoring what's happening in the crowd or whatever. Okay, that's good. But you just want to make sure that your thesis is bigger than just the article that they're giving you. The article can be one example, one piece of evidence, but you want to make sure that again, read the prompt, read it a few times if you have to. Make sure you have a clear understanding of the question that they're giving you and what they're asking for, and try to respond to that prompt directly, and that's going to be your thesis. And then from there, make sure that each of your paragraphs is kind of one main idea to back up that thesis. And yeah, I think those were my biggest comments. Other than that, I thought it was good. I thought people made a lot of good points. Um, like I've said before, make sure you have multiple paragraphs. I would go for at least 5 paragraphs, including an introduction and a conclusion. Make sure that you proofread before you submit. Like we've talked about before, once you're done with an essay and you feel like you're finished editing a lot of the stuff, just read through it again. Maybe read through it out loud. Maybe if you have somebody around, a family member or something, maybe have them just take a look at it just to make sure you didn't skip any words or anything. You just want to make sure you don't have any typos in what you're submitting. So make sure that you're taking that time to proofread. You could even print it out and go through it with a pen if you're able to. So yeah, that was one other thing I wanted to bring up. All right. The other thing I want to do in this video is go through the rubric for the mastery test that I have posted on this week's Moodle page. So you guys can pull this up maybe while you're watching this video, but I just want to go through a couple of the bullet points that they give for how they're grading it, and what what they describe as getting a grade of 6, and then we'll look at what they describe as getting a grade of 3, which 3 is like just passing, 6 is the best grade you can get, and then we'll also look at 2, which is like almost passing but not. All right, so for 6. Just going through these bullet points, they say essays at this level include a clear and well-defined thesis relevant to the issue raised in the prompt. So again, this is what I was saying of directly responding to the prompt in the practice one that we did. Promoters, should they be held accountable? Should they not? That is your thesis. Whichever side you're taking in that argument is your thesis. The main focus of your essay should not just be telling us what happened in the article. It should be making that argument. Next bullet point they give us. The thesis is further developed by extensive, elaborate, and focused support, which includes, but may not be limited to, references to the article provided to the students. So I think that's important. They want you to include a reference to the article, but they don't want that to be your only evidence. It says, which includes, but may not be limited to, references to the article. So you want to have at least one reference to the article, at least one quote, I would say, from the article. And, remember all the stuff we talked about with using quotes. You want to introduce the quote, explain the quote, like we've said before. But, yeah, so the evidence that you have, it's going to be, yeah, you can use stuff from the article, but you also just want to use, I don't know, like general kind of moral thinking. Like, in terms of the case of who's responsible, should the promoters, are they the ones who should be responsible? You could look at what happened specifically in the article, but you could also say, well, if you're the one giving a show, it's your responsibility that the fans are safe, and just have that be part of your argument. So you also want to look at these kind of like more big picture, I guess, kind of moral arguments, and just think about the reasons behind them. Well, why should they be held accountable? I feel like a lot of people in the essay were just kind of stating it as a fact, like, yeah, of course they should be held accountable. Well, why? That's what you're supposed to be convincing me of. Why? And I think it might be helpful for that example to think about, like, if we're not going to hold the promoters or the performers, like if we're asking if they should be held accountable, I think the other options would be like, I think some people might say, well, the fans, it should be on them. They should be responsible enough to not behave dangerously or injure anybody. Or I heard some people say, well, it should be on the venue, the place where the concert's being held should be the one providing the security and making sure it's safe, since it's their space or their building or whatever. So if we look at it in that context, you've got to prove to me why the performers specifically and the promoters, why they specifically should be held accountable, and not the fans, and not the venue, and not like the specific security guards who were there or something. Okay, so it's still going down this what they have as being a grade of 6. It says these references are integrated into the text in a way that is almost always organic, logical, and balanced. So integrating quotes into the text, to me, that's the stuff that we talked about using quotes. You can go back and watch my video on using quotes, introduce the quote, explain the quote, connect it to your thesis. I think that's what they're talking about there. Next bullet point, they say the ideas, examples, or other details in the support are consistently unified, well-developed, and coherent. So I think this is about organization of the essay. Does each of your paragraphs have one main idea that connects back to your thesis? Is it easy to see how each paragraph is advancing the argument that you introduced in your thesis? I think that's what they're talking about there. Next bullet point, they say there's clear evidence of sophistication in thought, vocabulary, and sentence structure. I wouldn't worry too much about that. I would just say, just say it in the way that makes sense to you. I would try to be as clear as possible. I wouldn't get hung up on trying to use big vocabulary words or, trying to use a thesaurus or operate with words that you don't have a great understanding of what they mean. I would prioritize being clear and saying what you mean in the clearest way possible. And then the last bullet point they have for a grade of 6, they say, while a few surface errors may exist, command of the language is demonstrated consistently throughout the essay. And that, to me, has to do with grammar stuff and typos. So if there were any, repeated grammar mistakes in the practice test that you submitted, I tried to make note of that and give you some advice. I think in my other video, I talked about the different kinds of there, the THERE as in over there. And I heard a good one to remember that. So over there, it has the word here in it, right? THERE. It has here in it. And because it's like a place, here, there. That's the kind of there that's like over there, THEIRE. It has the I in it, so it's kind of like the possessive one, I, like possession. So THEIRE, it was their book, it was their concert. And then THEY apostrophe RE, that's they are smushed together, and you know that because of the apostrophe. So that one just came to mind to me. But yeah, if there was any grammar stuff that was coming up multiple times, I tried to make a comment about that. You can also, watch my video, read through the documents we posted about grammar. Okay, so now I want to go to a grade of 3. And, we should be aiming for a 6, the ones that I just read. But a 3 is the lowest grade that we want to get. We don't really want to go below a 3. So here's what they say for a 3. They say essays at this level include a weak or emerging thesis relevant to the issue in the prompt. So I feel like they, this test is important. I've been trying to prepare you guys for it a lot. But I feel like when we read through what they have for a 3, it doesn't seem like they're asking for that much, Like it seems like you can be off the mark a little bit and still get this grade. So maybe, take some of the pressure off of yourself that way too when we read through this one. Because they say you could have a weak or emerging thesis relevant to the issue raised in the prompt. So it seems like even if you're not directly answering it, like we said, like yes, they should be held accountable. No, they shouldn't, which would be the most direct thesis you could have. It seems like even if it's a little more murky than that, you can still get a 3. They say the thesis is developed only by minimal or inadequate support, which again has to do with the reasons you're giving in your paragraphs. References to the article may seem insufficient, forced, illogical, or unbalanced. Details or examples are not fully developed. Though organization is evident, problems with unity and coherence may exist. So I think for a 3, I would say the easiest way to get lower than a 3 is if you just had like one paragraph, is if you just had like one block of text or something, or if you had like 2 paragraphs, or if you just don't write enough. I think as long as you've got a clear thesis, as long as you've put some thought into the organization of your paragraphs, as long as you have 5 paragraphs, I think you should be able to get to a 3. They say the focus of the essay is not always clear, which again, to me, in terms of the essay being focused, it's about connecting your paragraphs back to your thesis. I think a good thing to do is always like at the end of your paragraph, to just kind of get back and be like, yeah, and for this reason, this is why the promoter should be held accountable. I just think it's always good at the end of one of your body paragraphs to just sort of go back to the thesis and just let the reader know, here's how everything I said in this paragraph was proving my thesis. And maybe that feels a little repetitive sometimes, but I would rather it be slightly repetitive than for it to be unclear how your paragraph relates back to your thesis, because that's how you get to a place where the focus of your essay is not going to be clear, like they say here. And they also say mechanical and grammatical errors often interfere with understanding of the text. So they give you some room to have, you know, to miss the mark a little bit and still get a 3. So it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm trying to help you guys write the best essay that you can, but it also doesn't have to be perfect based on the way that they've explained it in the rubric here that I'm looking at, which they've told me this is the rubric that they're going to use to grade it. So yeah, as long as you've got the thesis, the paragraphs, you proofread it, you use at least one quote from the article. You are not only talking about the article the whole time, you just use the article as one piece of evidence. I think you guys should definitely be able to get a 3 or higher. So yeah, the rubric's posted. Go ahead and read through it if it helps you just to know what they're looking for. If it makes you feel a little bit better about what you're writing, you can definitely look at that and take it into account. And I just wanted to give you, my little explanation of it here. But again, I've said it over and over again, but those are the things that are the most important to me about this mastery test. And I guess this will probably be the last time that I'm going to talk about it in a video. So I'll end up by saying good luck, and by reminding you guys that you have to complete this by 11:59 p.m. on Wednesday, 4/20. So make sure that you carve out some time. It seems like for the practice test, a lot of people were taking around 45 minutes to an hour. So that is probably enough time, but they give you a full 2.5 hours if you want to use all that time. So yeah, just make sure that you read my comments, get in touch if you still have questions, and yeah, good luck. I'll see you guys next time.